Nnanna stood in the dimly lit hut, his heart pounding as he looked at the witch before him. Her eyes sparkled with a strange light as if she knew what his answer would be before he even spoke.
I accept,
he finally said, his voice barely more than a whisper. He had made his choice. The promise of power, of a life without fear, was too strong to resist. The witch smiled, and for a moment he thought he saw a hint of sadness in her gaze. She raised her hands, murmuring words he couldn't understand. A strange, cold wind swept through the hut, wrapping around him, filling him with a power he had never felt before.
Your wish is granted,
she whispered.
But remember, Nnanna, every gift has its price. You belong to me now.
As she spoke, the light in her eyes faded, and she seemed to vanish into the shadows, leaving Nnanna alone. For a moment, he felt a strange emptiness, a sinking feeling that something was terribly wrong. But the power coursing through his veins was undeniable. He felt stronger, faster, as if he could take on anything that came his way. With renewed energy, he made his way back through the forest, moving as if guided by an invisible force. The shadows no longer frightened him, and the strange whispers faded into silence. By the time he reached the village, dawn was breaking, casting a pale light over the familiar huts and paths. The villagers greeted him with cheers and praise, and word spread quickly of his success. To them, it was a miracle. No one had ever entered the forbidden forest and returned. The elders rewarded him generously, giving him more wealth than he had ever dreamed of. But Nnanna's heart was restless. Despite the riches, despite the praise, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The witch's final words echoed in his mind, every gift has its price. Days passed, and at first, everything seemed normal. Nnanna continued to hunt, his newfound strength making him even more skilled. Animals that once eluded him fell easily under his aim. The people marveled at his power, calling him a hero, a protector of the village. But strange things began to happen. One evening, as he sat by the fire, he noticed a shadow flickering at the edge of his vision. When he turned, there was nothing there. Dismissing it as a trick of the light, he ignored it. But the shadows continued to follow him, growing darker and more distinct each day. At night, he heard whispers. Soft, haunting voices that seemed to call his name, echoing in the silence. He tried to ignore them, telling himself it was just his imagination. But the voices grew louder, filling his mind, until he could no longer sleep. Then, one night, he had a dream. In it, he stood in the forbidden forest, surrounded by shadows. The witch appeared before him, her eyes cold and unforgiving. You belong to me now, she said, her voice echoing in his mind. You accepted my bargain, and now, you must pay the price. Nnanna woke with a start, sweat dripping down his face. The dream had felt so real, and the witch's words lingered in his mind like a curse. He knew, deep down, that he couldn't escape her hold on him. Desperate to rid himself of the curse, he sought help from the village elders. But they looked at him with fear, avoiding his gaze, whispering that he had brought something dark upon himself. You should have never gone to the witch, Elder Ifena warned, her voice trembling. Her power is not meant for men. You are marked, Nnanna. Only she can lift the curse. Haunted by the witch's words and the shadows that followed him, Nnanna knew he had to return to the forbidden forest. The thought filled him with dread, but he had no other choice. He couldn't live like this, trapped in fear, his soul bound to the witch. With a heavy heart, he made his way back to the forest, each step weighed down by regret. The trees seemed darker, the air colder, and the shadows thicker than before. As he ventured deeper, the whispers returned, growing louder with each step, until he reached the witch's hut once more. There, in the dim light, she waited, her expression unreadable.
Why have you returned, Nnanna?
She asked, her voice soft yet cold.
I made a mistake,
he said, his voice trembling.
Please, lift this curse. I cannot live like this.
The witch tilted her head, her eyes dark and unfeeling.
You came to me for power, for strength beyond any other man. And now, you wish to escape the price. There is no freedom from a bargain once it is made.
Nnanna fell to his knees, his voice breaking.
I will do anything. Please, release me.
For a moment, the witch seemed to pity him. But then, her gaze hardened.
There is only one way to lift the curse, she said. You must give up everything that was granted to you. Your strength, your skill, your wealth, it must all be returned. You will live as a simple man, with nothing to your name.
Nnanna's heart sank. The thought of losing everything he had gained was unbearable. But he knew he had no choice. I accept, he whispered, his voice filled with sorrow. The witch raised her hands, murmuring strange words. A cold wind swept through him, and he felt the power leaving his body, draining away like water slipping through his fingers. His limbs grew weak, his vision dimmed, and he fell to the ground, exhausted. When he opened his eyes, the witch was gone. The hut was empty, and he was alone in the darkness. Weak and weary, Nnanna made his way back to the village. The people barely recognized him, for he was no longer the strong, fearless hunter they once knew. His body was frail, his face gaunt, and his eyes haunted by the shadows that still lingered in his mind. In time, he lost his wealth, his status, and his place in the village. People spoke of him in whispers, calling him cursed, warning others to stay away. He became a lonely figure, wandering the edges of the village, haunted by the price of his desire. And though he had given up everything, he knew he would never be free of the witch's bargain. For the shadows followed him still, a silent reminder of the cost of his choice. In the end, Nnanna learned that true strength came not from power, but from the heart. But it was a lesson learned too late, for he was forever bound to the darkness he had brought upon himself. The villagers say that on quiet nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear his whispers, a warning to those who dare to seek power beyond their grasp.